I have all these things that I can't tell you.
Thank you so much for coming out here with me, Christopher. I'm having a wonderful time. You mean a lot to me, and I'm glad that you're having a blast. I am so out of breath.
Hi. It's me. You guys should call me back when you have a chance. Hi. Hi. It's me. I miss your face. I was just calling to say hi. Call me back. Bye.
I was like, do you have 401k? And he was like, yeah. I was like, do you have 401k? And he was like, yeah. I was like, do you have 401k? And he was like, yeah. And I mean, the reason I ask him this is because if I get into a relationship with somebody, I want to know, like, what kind of baggage that they have. I think that's important if I walk into a situation where I'm like, hey, I have good credit, and I have all these things, and I have all these things, and I have all these things, and I have all these things that I can't tell you, like, the exact words of the exact conversation at the exact time and place, because it's like we had a lot of conversations. I mean, we talked every single day, so it's like I'm trying to help you guys with the stuff, like the stuff that's more current. I can give you guys a lot more like detail and exact times, but when you're asking me about something that happened 6 weeks ago and exactly what was said, it's like, I mean, I'm sure I can give you a general idea, but to be honest with you, like, to pick.
And oh boy, isn't that the truth? They had a lot of conversations. They talked every single day, and we know that there is absolutely positively no way, even if Nichol Kessinger had not deleted all of her voicemails and texts and any trace of Chris Watts that she had on her phone, and then, according to him, instructed him to do the same, there is no way that we would have a complete record of their communication, because although she was asked on several occasions if she and Chris used any third-party apps when they communicated, to which she answered no, we know that she used Skype and Facebook Messenger when communicating with Chris, and this is according to her own account. When we are looking at the timeline, as far as Nichol Kessinger is concerned, it's important to realize that we are working with the timeline that is available to us, given what records were or were not destroyed by her own hand. So let's start out by listening to a portion of the interview with Nichol Kessinger and CBI's Kevin Kobach on February 16th, 2018. This segment of the interview is absolutely packed with things waiting to be unpacked, so, well, let's just take a listen.
Fill it out before I sign it.
Yep. And just, you read it, and if you have any questions, then we'll put on there what we're after.
I'm so hungry.
You should have told me. I would have got you some food. I got food in my car.
It's not staying down. It's just coming
She hadn't been
back up.
feeling good. Not because of any, just,
Like, I got sick prior to
Jim.
this whole thing happening, and then I think all of this compounding with the
Stress.
fact that I'm sick, it's just not good. I've not really been eating or sleeping much at all.
Now, I just kept that last 20-30 second soundbite in just to remind us, if you forgot, or maybe you haven't seen this entire interview before, we need to remember how completely inappropriate so much of the content in this interview was on all levels. I assure you, if I am sitting in a police station and I'm with my son, who is rightfully now under the age of 18, so that would be appropriate, whereas obviously it's not appropriate here that her father is sitting with her since she is over the age of 18, but let's set that aside. I assure you, I would not be making comments about my son's tummy aches. And I don't think my son will be talking about his tummy aches, even though he's 14 going on 15 next week, because it's inappropriate.
yeah. I'm with you. We definitely need to accelerate the case because the more it takes, the less sure that they are of situations.
And of course, we can only speculate here what Dwayne Kessinger is talking about when he says the less sure they are of certain situations. What we do know is that for somebody just sitting in, observing an interview having to do with a triple homicide and additional charges, he seems to be a very authoritative and does indeed yield a great deal of power in this interview.
But on the other end, I think if you do just that only,
You tell me what you're willing to provide
is
to
that,
me, and we'll
is
write
that
it
good
on.
enough?
I just want, like, our text conversation, and then, I guess, our phone call records.
So I'm going to put.
So the time and date of the phone call records, and then our text message.
Could we get photos of him?
Huh?
Could we get photos of him?
Off of
Would
that?
you mind if we got his photos that he sent to you?
Oh, well, they'll be in that text message thing.
So all his photos were sent. There was no apps or anything else you
No,
used that you
no,
guys
no,
were
no,
sending.
no,
It was
no.
all just text messages.
Yeah.
Blatant, bold-faced, disgusting lie.
Okay. So it'd be an attachment to a text that he sent you.
Pretty much.
But
Everything is in the text and the phone call records.
so
Like, all of it.
because we don't have it on tape, we discussed prior to turning the tape on Tuesday, which would have been the 14th of August. You had read some newspaper articles on the 13th and the 14th that regarded this case. You had also had a conversation with Chris at some point during the day on Monday. And on Tuesday, because of what you found, specifically what you said was, and don't let me put words in your mouth, but you found out that his wife was pregnant.
Many have noticed that this is an interesting interview technique. Don't let me put words in your mouth while I'm putting words in your mouth.
And yes.
And you did not know that prior. And you found that out via the newspaper articles, and that caused you concern.
By the end of this video, yes, the one that you're watching right here, I believe that you will agree with me that there is absolutely irrefutable evidence that shows that Nichol Kessinger absolutely positively, beyond a shadow of any doubt, knew that Shanann Watts was pregnant.
Well, I just realized that he was lying to me, and I was like, well, if you can lie to me about this, what else are you lying to me about? And it made me realize that maybe his wife was in danger at that point, and it was day two, and she still wasn't home.
Absolutely, Nichol Kessinger. If ever Nichol Kessinger speaks the truth in this interview, it is right there. There is reason to be alarmed because it's day 2, and Chris Watts' wife, pregnant wife, and his 2 little girls were not home. Has there ever been a greater compelling reason to tell the truth? If you have information that might in any way help investigators get to the bottom of this horrific case.
What did that cause you to do with your phone, though?
Oh, what, when I deleted those? I was just kind of grossed out by him, to be honest with you. I was just like, I don't know what's going on right now, but you just lied to me, and I don't want to see this come over my phone anymore. So I removed it.
So you you already said, but you removed text messages?
I deleted all of his stuff because he lied to me. I mean, that's what it was. It was the hurt that made me delete it, and then it was the lie that made me start questioning everything else he'd been telling me for the last few days.
And that's when you decided to come forward?
Yes.
Here is another example of the fundamental questions that we have to have when we are looking at the timeline of Nichol Kessinger. He says, so that's when you decided to come forward. She says, yes. I'm sure you'll be shocked to find out that that's not exactly true. Check this out from the discovery. It should be noted that approximately 3 hours before the polygraph was scheduled to begin at 8 a.m., I received a phone call from Anadarko Regional Security Manager Tony Husky. Husky advised me he had reviewed Chris's computer, and it was possible Chris had started up a relationship with an Anadarko contracted employee. He had located emails between Chris and the contracted employee, Nicole or Nikki Kessinger. So we know that law enforcement knew about the affair at 5 a.m. on August 15th, 3 hours before the polygraph exam was about to start, and it was not until a couple hours later that Nichol Kessinger called law enforcement.
Yes.
Okay. So just for context,
Yes.
when people delete stuff off phones, usually we go,
No,
hold on
no,
a
no,
second.
no, no. It
And
wasn't
that's why I wanted-
malicious at
right.
all. It
And I'm not
wasn't
saying it's
malicious at
malicious,
all. He lied to me. It just hurt. Like, I had never felt like he'd ever lied to me before. And it was a big lie. I mean,
Right.
telling somebody that you're in the midst of a divorce and then you have a wife that has a 15-week-old baby on the way is a huge, huge thing. And I was
Absolutely, that is a huge, huge thing. And once again, all the more reason that she better be telling the truth if she has any information that might help law enforcement in this investigation.
You want on there? I think that's about.
That's it. I mean, I don't have social media. I don't really have anything else you guys can pull.
Okay.
Is there anything else you know of that could help us with this that is not on this sheet?
As far as like data,
That's on your phone?
no. I mean, everything we did was like text and talk, pretty much. I mean, and like I said, any pictures that I had, like even if you were to restore all my regular photos, there's so many pictures in there, and you wouldn't even know which ones were for him and which ones weren't. But any picture that I wanted to send to him, I sent via text. So if you guys go through the text and the attachments, you will have everything that wasn't said verbally and was done via text. But I think that's it. Like I don't have anything else. As far as like no Facebook, no Instagram, no Twitter, no LinkedIn, like none of it. So
So check this out. On page 2082 of the unredacted discovery, the numbered discovery, the very first item on the official case discovery timeline is this. I kid you not. This is the very first item. September 1st, 2017, Kessinger searched the internet for the name, quote, Shanann Watts, end quote. The very first item on the official discovery timeline is this. On September 1st, 2017, Kessinger searched the internet for the name Shanann Watts. Does this have some significance? I would say it absolutely must, considering it was chosen as being the first item on the official discovery timeline. How about that? In one of the renditions of Discovery that Weld County released to those who requested the Discovery file, Nichol Kessinger's phone records from July 13th to August 13th appeared in the Discovery. It was only a couple months later that we found those who requested the Discovery file got a rendition of the Discovery file that no longer included those phone records from July 13th to August 13th, which really, those are the relevant phone records that anyone would want to see when parsing through this case. After August 13th, really the only interesting things that happened on Nichol Kessinger's cell phone were her searches, asking if police could find deleted text messages and some other shady things. And well, we may as well take a look at the last item that has to do with Nichol Kessinger that appeared in the official discovery timeline, since we have established that the first item on the official discovery timeline had very much to do with her, and that was her search for Shanann Watts on September 1st, 2017. The last item having to do with Nichol Kessinger on this timeline is August 19th, 2018. Kessinger searched the internet on topics related to Amber Frey, the mistress of Scott Peterson. He murdered his wife and unborn child. Her searches included Frey's book deal, her net worth, and, quote, did people hate Amber Frey, end quote. And that also concludes the official timeline on the case discovery for the murders of Shanann, Bella, Celeste, and unborn baby Nico Watts. Very telling, I think so. Because remember that Nichol Kessinger deleted all of her text messages and any interaction record that existed on her phone between herself and Chris Watts. Apparently, she did this on Tuesday, August 14th, and she says that's because she just learned on that day that Chris Watts' beautiful wife, Shanann Watts, was 15 weeks pregnant.
Like all of it.
Because we don't have it on tape, we discussed prior to turning the tape on Tuesday, which would have been the 14th of August, you had read some newspaper articles on the 13th and the 14th that regarded this case. You had also had a conversation with Chris at some point during the day on Monday. And on Tuesday, because of what you found, specifically what you said was, and don't let me put words in your mouth, but you found out that his wife was pregnant.
So as we do look at the phone records from July 13th to August 13th, we see that Nichol Kessinger's phone pinged in Frederick, Colorado, a total of, 3 times in that time period. We also have a record that her phone pinged in Frederick, Colorado on July 4th, which I'm just going to set that to the side for now because it's not within that July 13th to August 13th time frame I'm talking about, but she and Chris Watts both acknowledged that she was in Frederick, Colorado on July 4th. So when we're looking at the 3 Frederick, Colorado pings in that July 13th to August 13th time frame, one was on July 14th. And this is also a day that Chris Watts and Nichol Kessinger both agree that she was in Frederick, Colorado. Now, in my opinion, July 14th was an absolutely pivotal day in this case, and I believe this is the day when Chris Watts started putting the plan into motion. This was the day when, after one of their outings, I believe they went to the Mustang Museum, they went back to Chris Watts' house, and on this day, Nichol Kessinger claims that the dog Dieter strong-armed her into going upstairs where she saw a picture of Shanann and one of the girls. And she claims on that day, she started questioning Chris as to why he's not staying with his wife. She even went so far as to assert that she encouraged him, starting on this day, to stay with his wife. Now, one of my favorite comments that people leave on my channel said no side piece ever. I really do agree with that. The other time, or the second time of the third, when we're talking about the pings on Nichol Kessinger's cell phone in Frederick, Colorado, from July 13th to August 13th, is on July 18th. Now, this ping was actually initiated from Chris Watts' phone. He was also in Frederick, Colorado on that day, and he was calling Nichol Kessinger. I think she was kind of like, hanging around there. There was some story told about getting touch-up paint for her car that was perhaps picked up on that day. So of all of the pings from Nichol Kessinger's cell phone from July 14th to August 13th, the third time that she pinged in Frederick, Colorado was on the morning of August 13th at 6:17 6:16 a.m. This is a critical time because this would be right around the time, a little bit after the time that Chris Watts left his driveway after we saw, based on the security camera footage from neighbor Nate's security camera, that he had been packing his car for about half an hour, and then he took off heading to Survey 319, where later that week, the bodies of his beautiful wife, Shanann, 15 weeks pregnant, his daughter, Bella, and his daughter, Cece, were found. Now, these things happened. They were real. This issue has been put to rest, and I'm showing you the evidence right here on this video. So guys, please, please take a look at everything that is available. Think for yourself, and don't ever just believe one source when it comes to critical information regarding this case or any other. You always have to ask yourself, who has an agenda? And what exactly is that agenda? You know what I'm saying?
In case you still have any doubt regarding the phone ping, I'm going to break it down a little more for you to show you exactly why Nichol Kessinger's phone ping in Frederick, Colorado at 6:16 on August 13th means that she was right near 2825 Saratoga Trail, the residence of the Watts family.
Okay. Which was a carrier Kessinger was using. So down here where the little red marker is, that's Kessinger's residence. So her route to work up in Platteville is as shown over to the right up to Platteville. Takes a total of 33 minutes. You'll see right about in the middle of that map, you'll see Frederick. What we're doing, guys, is we're zooming in to this full route, 33-minute route map, okay? All right, so here it is. So you see next to this highway here, I have all these pictures of super cool Kessinger at the sand dunes. So that's just indicating that's her route going, you know, from the bottom of the screen upwards. Now you see over to the right, there's 1, 2, 3 towers with the pink arrows pointed towards them. Each of these 3 towers service Verizon, and they have bandwidths that are strong enough for sure to be favorable to pick up a signal of somebody traveling on this highway. The bandwidth probably is such for the highway traffic. Now you see the red arrow, the large red arrow here points to the tower that she pinged off of, okay? So just imagine Kessinger traveling along this highway that's highlighted in green right next to her picture. Just look at the distance of a car traveling on that highway, the distance from that car to the Frederick Tower or that car to any one of the towers to the right. The distance of the towers on the right is a lot less with a strong enough bandwidth than the distance of somebody traveling on that highway to the Frederick Tower. So what this tells me, really beyond a shadow of a doubt, is that she was right in the vicinity of 2825 Saratoga Trail.
So now let's move on to the 111-minute phone call and NK's personal timeline from the evening of August 12th going into the early morning hours of Monday morning, August.
Through all of Kessinger's phone bills, her phone bill from the dates of July 14th through August 13th, you know, what I did was I looked at the longest call on each of these, you know, pages of her phone bill. So I just want to note that the 111-minute phone call was really out of character for their conversations. This wasn't their normal pattern of talking to each other. So I went through and I looked at the longest phone call that NK held on each of these pages and the longest phone call that she had with Watts on each of these pages. And we find
that, other than the 111-minute phone call, guys, the next 3 longest calls lasted 51 minutes, 52 minutes, and 54 minutes, respectively. So you see, that's a really long phone call. We could probably say, because there's only a short period of time that we don't have their phone records, according to when they say their relationship was occurring, it's probably safe to say that was the longest phone call that they ever had. So even when you look at, this is all ping information, this little, unofficial timeline here, we see that their 111-minute phone call, pointed to by this big red arrow, starts at 9:28 that Sunday evening, August 12th, and it ends at 11:19. There's no activity on NK's phone until the 6:16 a.m. ping the morning of August 13th, we see right here, when she had a 1-minute phone call to her friend Jim, is highlighted in yellow. The next activity, guys, on her phone was not until 2:28 p.m. And that call was initiated in Platteville. That's where she works. And again, this is a very unusual pattern for NK to not have any activity on her phone throughout the whole day. So now I also told you guys that the 111-minute phone call was conspicuously missing from the official discovery timeline. So just let me show you what I mean here. So here you see this is the official redacted discovery. So you see right here in the middle of the page begins August 13th. Well, if you just go up a little bit, you're going into August 12th. Now, I want you to see how they included like everything that happened on August 12th. Everything that Chris Watts did on August 12th is in this discovery. Look at, this is a lot of information as compared to the other dates in the official timeline in the discovery. It's like 5 or 6 pages long, okay? So look, August 12th starts right here. We have everything that Watts did starting at 7:32 a.m. that morning, okay? So now if we go back down, or up or down, I'm scrolling down, but we're going up in time, right? We get to the evening. So at 21:13, so that would be at 9:13. We see that Shanann sent a message to Addie explaining things. At 21:29, which is 9:29, we have Shanann made an unanswered call to Watts. Well, the reason that likely is, my friends, is because a minute before that, at 9:28, or in military time, 21:28, that's when that 111-minute phone call began. There is no mention of that phone call here in the official discovery. I just find that to be a conspicuously missing piece of information. So I don't know if anyone has any comments or questions about that. I'd be interested to know what you think about that. I mean, every piece of information that man did that day, other than this phone call, is here on Discovery.
Chris Watts and his former mistress, Nichol Kessinger, have to say about that 111-minute phone conversation that was much longer than any other phone conversation they had ever had. Notice how they use a lot of the same language.
What were you talking to Nikki about before your wife got home?
Before she got home?
You talked for like several hours.
I covered it. I mean, we talked a lot. Just conversations, and just random conversations. We talk a lot.
Does Nikki know about any of this? Seriously?
Well, she doesn't know, like, I mean, she knows, like, from the news.
meat of this whole
Let's get to the phone call on Saturday from 9 to 11. What did you guys, or pardon me, on Sunday from 9 to 11?
Yeah, we talked a few times. So, Sunday, I think so. I need to think. I can't even think.
Take a couple breaths and take a second.
Sunday night. I don't even know. I don't think I was like concerned about anything at that point.
You guys had a meal, a nice meal the night before. You knew his wife was probably coming home late that evening.
Oh, you know what? I still don't remember what we talked about. Honestly, we talk about so much random stuff. It's so hard to pinpoint some of these things. I don't remember what we talked about. I do remember that was a long phone conversation that we probably talked about all sorts of stuff. One thing I do remember though, that I didn't remember earlier when I was talking to Mark. So this is where I'm starting to remember little bits and pieces. I don't remember. Yeah, I know. So the phone conversation. I don't remember what was in the phone conversation. Probably nothing of relevance, to be honest with you. But usually he talks to me when he's down in the basement in his bed before he goes to bed and before I go to bed. And I could hear the TV on, which I thought was kind of weird. I didn't ask him. I just heard it in the background. And I remember thinking, and it was right before we got off the phone, I was like, why the hell is he up? And there's no TV downstairs. So I was well, maybe, I don't know.
So no TV in the basement where he usually calls you from?
Yeah, and I don't know how many TVs they have. I've never...
So as you heard, guys, both Chris Watts and Nichol Kessinger, wrote off that question, what was said in that 2-hour conversation by saying, I don't know, it's just a bunch of random stuff. We just talk a lot, can't even remember. And Nichol Kessinger somehow diverted Kevin Kobach into, talking about the television situation in the Watts residence. It was totally ridiculous. So what's up with that? So you see, guys, here's the picture. The reason Nichol Kessinger is so suspicious is due to her deleting messages, breaking her SIM card, lying about why she did that, lying about knowing that Chris Watts' wife, Shanann, was 15 weeks pregnant, and a whole host of other things. The 6:16 a.m. ping, the 111-minute phone call the night before, well, actually, the time during which Shanann Watts was supposed to be returning home to her husband, the phone call that was longer than any call they had had before, at 11:25 on neighbor Nate's security camera footage. You see headlights driving by the Watts house. That's right after their phone call. I didn't even include that in this video. We can talk about that another time. And then after that 111-minute phone call, no activity on her phone until the 6:16 a.m. ping that I showed you was right near the Watts residence. And then after that 6:16 a.m. ping, no activity on her phone until 2:38 p.m., which is totally unusual for Miss Kessinger. And she has no alibi for that morning. There's no record of her punching into work, only punching out. So guys, seriously, what's up? That's the whole deal. I hope you understand things a little bit better now. Please leave a comment. Let me know what you think. If you have any questions, go ahead and ask them. I'll be monitoring comments on this video, or you can always email me at wattsobsession@gmail.com. Thanks so much for watching. Please click like and subscribe, and I hope to see you again soon. Take care, y'all. All right, guys, so it is my hope that that explanation allowed you to understand a little more about Nichol Kessinger's 6:16 a.m. ping in Frederick, Colorado, Monday morning, August 13th, 2018, and why it's so important, and also about the entire Nichol Kessinger timeline from Sunday evening, going over the night, into Monday, August 13, and throughout that day. Now remember, guys, Nichol Kessinger has no alibi on Monday. There's a record of her punching out of work, but there is no record of her punching into work. We have never seen that. It's not in discovery. It is not in any of the interviews that have been released between law enforcement with Nichol Kessinger. As far as we know, it does not exist, okay? So let's take a step back in time. So we're going to work our way backwards here and see, what happened between Nichol Kessinger and Chris Watts leading up to this terrible tragedy that occurred on August 13th, 2018. It is my strong belief, based on a copious amount of research that I've done, that July 14th was a critical day in their relationship. It was a turning point, and it started the trail of fuel that led up to the fire that was this tragedy that occurred on August 13th. So let's take a look at what occurred on July 14th, 2018, in Nichol Kessinger's own words. Now, you can hear her own words telling you about what happened on July 14th, 2018, in 3 of the 5 interviews that were recorded, the audio at least, between her and Kevin Kobach. She also gives you a written account of what happened on July 14th, longer after the fact, through her 7-page letter to law enforcement that was dated September 5th, 2018. It's worth noting that this letter was submitted to law enforcement on the day, or the day that she found out that she was no longer going to be working with Kevin Kobach, but rather moving forward, she was going to be working with Dave Baumhover. I don't know if it was Kobach himself or perhaps some people in law enforcement who were listening to the recorded interviews of Kessinger and Kobach, decided that maybe they weren't getting as far as they wanted to get with him being the interviewer. We all know that their relationship, and I'm speaking of NK and Kobach, was really friendly, maybe getting a little too close. Perhaps there were some connections that they were making, just maybe, that were prohibiting him from getting as many answers from her as law enforcement wanted or expected. So in case you forgot what it sounded like when Kobach and NK were talking when he was interviewing her, let's take a listen to a sound clip from one of their phone interviews.
Thanks for remembering that. Yeah, I'm trying. I'm really trying to help you guys. I need you guys to help me too. Yes, ma'am. This is a team, but just don't. So the reason why we can't, I did think about this yesterday, that I would like to sit down.
So yes, you did hear right there. She said, I'm trying to help you, but we're just doing this as a team here. So don't fucking let me down. Let her down? What exactly did law enforcement owe Nichol Kessinger? Let's hear Nichol Kessinger's own words what she and CW did on July 14th. This clip is from the second interview where she came in to speak with, actually it would be the third interview in total, where she came into the police station to speak with Kevin Kobach. And yes, her father was present.
Okay.
So the second time I went to that house, I'm not sure what day it was, but it was the weekend of the 14th.
Of August? July?
I don't know if it was the 14th or the 15th. One of those 2 days. But we had went out and we stopped there just real quick on the way back. And we were there not very long. But that time I saw a picture of his wife and one of his kids. And I remember thinking to myself, wow, she's so beautiful. And I took a step back and I was just like, this man has a gorgeous house. He has beautiful babies. He has a beautiful wife. He has an awesome job. Why would he want to leave this? And I remember talking to him about it, and that was the first time that I tried to actually say, what do you think about not separating from your wife? What if you really try to work on this? And he had expressed to me that we've tried to work on this, and it's not working, so that is why we're separating. And I spent some time, because it almost made me feel bad, where I was, to the point where I'm engaging in a relationship with a man who, the way he described it, is in a contractual agreement, but was not in, an emotional relationship with somebody. And for me, the way I would have preferred to do this is to avoid it till that contractual agreement was also
done, and he was done. And he could have approached me and said, I'm just had a divorce, you know, maybe we could take this slow. What do you think? But instead it was, oh, we're separated and we're working on a divorce. And that is the part that I feel bad about, because I should have waited on that and I didn't. And, you know, I was just like, well, they're already there. So, you know, but then being in a house, it was just like, why? Fix this. Find a way to fix this. Make it work, you know? And I was like trying to push him to do it, and he seemed pretty reluctant to do it. He didn't want to. And, I don't know, we were still seeing each other fairly frequently, but I kind of like backed away so we weren't hanging out quite as much, and we were still close, but it was just like I really wanted him to try. Like I wanted to know that he tried and it didn't work, and then he moved on, not that, you know, they both kind of tried and then he got himself into a situation with somebody else. And I don't know, I just thought he had a beautiful life going on and he could have made it work. That was the way I looked at it from the outside.
So is this something you reflected on since this event, or was this you?
No, I was doing it then. Like
you said, this doesn't look right. He's kind of, I don't want to be responsible for breaking up a marriage, especially with 2 children. Is that kind of the gist I'm getting here?
I didn't think it didn't look right. I mean, I think he was legitimately sleeping in the basement, and I didn't think that these two were, I mean, I think it was like, hey, we're both stuck in this house for now. We got to sell this. In the meantime, you live here, I live here. We sleep in different rooms, take care of the kids. That's just like kind of how I took that. And no, I didn't think it didn't look right. I just thought it just seemed like he had so much going on, and it was just beautiful that I was like, why don't you just try this out, you know, and see if you can fix it. And he'd always be like, well, what about us? What about us? I'm like, don't worry about us. Like, that is more important. Like, try to see if you can, like, salvage whatever it is that you have going on with your wife. And you know, I always got the impression that he was a great father to his kids, like, always. And so, you know, I was like, and be the dad that you want to be. I was like, and see if you can make it work. And he just, like, we kind of talked about it off and on for, like, a few weeks. And I was just kind of like, I don't know. Like, I think I was kind of, like, cold feet about it after I went over his house. And so this was, like, pretty early on. And then he told me that, he went to North Carolina, and he was like, I'm going to talk to her when I'm in North Carolina and see if I...
Okay, so there are several things in that audio clip that are just wrong. Most of them I'm sure you picked up on yourself. So a couple things relative to the date, July 14th, 2018, and the way her stories don't line up with each other is that she says outright, you know, we were there for a not very long time. Okay, we were there for a short time. All right, and during the time that they were there, it's certainly, now you tell me in the comments if you think I'm wrong, she makes it sound like her big concern was CW saving his marriage, his beautiful relationship with his wife, right? That's the main concern as she relays it to Kevin Kobach. You know, she says it almost made me feel bad, and talks about the contractual agreement that supposedly Watts told her he was in with his wife. I don't know about that. Maybe, maybe not. She kept saying, you know, I really wanted him to try. Something that I noticed was she said, I really want him to try. I want him to know that they tried and then it didn't work out and he moved on. You know, she kind of catches herself there. It's not that she wanted them to try for the sake of him saving a beautiful thing. She wanted him to try so he could prove to her that she was number one. She wasn't second fiddle. That he really wanted to be with her above all else, okay? Kobach explicitly asks her, is this something you reflected on? And she said, nope, I was doing it then, which we know she wasn't. You know, at least she later says after that, yeah, I kind of pulled back. I was cold feet in it. And we know from the mountain of evidence that we see in discovery, and I'm sure there's a lot that we don't see in discovery, that was not true at all. She also says outright to Kobach, well, it wasn't about us. I kept saying to him when he would say, well, what about us? Well, what about us? I would say to him, well, don't worry about us. Worry about your relationship. That's more important. But then she clearly is going to contradict herself in the 7-page letter that we're about to take a look at, that she submitted to law enforcement when she found out that she was having a switch in investigators from Kevin Kobach to Dave Baumhover. So let's go ahead and take a look at this 7-page letter that NK sent in unsolicited to law enforcement that she dated September 5th, 2018, okay? So she says that we went to his house and she went to drop him off after they visited the Shelby Mustang Museum in Boulder. So that's what she was referring to, and we just listened to that recording from her interview. She says, while at his house, I felt uncomfortable, as if I did not belong there. Well, no shit. He had built a beautiful life, and it made me think that there was still a chance for him to fix things with his wife. I've noticed that as I've listened to all these interviews and her letter, there's just some choice wording that she weaves throughout. It's just the wording is repeated. To me, it's almost rehearsed, repeated, and repeated again. She says, I told him that I did not think it was fair to SW or to me that he was trying to live 2 lives by being in a relationship with both of us at the same time. Said that I think he either needed to fix things with her or let me go, or he needed to move towards trying to finalize his divorce. I told him that I thought his problems with SW were fixable and that he should focus on trying to rekindle the relationship that they had before giving up. He said that SW was set on separating and that so was he. He said that SW wants something, she gets her way. I told him that I did not understand why he hadn't completed the divorce after all these months, if they were so adamant about it. If she wanted it as bad as he stated, I did not understand why it seemed so stagnant. At this moment, I realized that he might be lying to me about his separation. So I started quizzing him on things that he had told me earlier. Okay, so she remembers this much later while she is writing this letter to law enforcement, and she includes these very specific details. But she did not remember any of this, the part about him possibly lying and what we're about to learn. She quizzed him on when she was interviewed by law enforcement. It's just all so weird. It's like she builds her story as she's going along to whatever best suits her and makes her look as good as she possibly can given what's happened. So she goes on to say, this I refer to as the moment any guy I know would never, ever, 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 ever want to date this woman or would dump her if he was dating her. So she says, I asked him when was the last time he was intimate with his wife. Good Lord, heaven above. And then she says, CW told me that day that the last time that he and his wife had sex was in May. But he told me on an earlier date that the two had not been intimate since March or early April. She then says, I asked CW if he used protection when he slept with her because he stated on an earlier date that he had used condoms when they had sex. He told me that he had not used protection. She goes on to say, I asked him if he was lying about the separation, and CW said no, in capital letters. I asked him if he was actively trying to have a child with SW since they had unprotected sex. He said no, in capital letters. I left his house. So I think the reason that this is relevant, the difference we see here between her verbal account that she gave law enforcement when she was interviewed and this written account that she gave law enforcement after she had time to think about it and think about what was going to make her look best, was that in her first verbal account, it's all about him and Shanann and their marriage, even though she won't say Shanann's name, and him saving his beautiful life. But here, and I don't know why she includes these details about asking him when they had been intimate, But, I think this is probably more along the lines of truth, if anything. I think she did go down this line of questioning, asking him when they had last been intimate, etc., because it was never always about CW, and definitely not Shanann or anyone else's happiness for that matter. It was always about her and her happiness and getting exactly what she wanted. So let's take a look at what Chris Watts himself had to say in regards to what happened on July 14th, 2018. We get Chris Watts' account in kind of bits and pieces through his interview with Tammy Lee, Dave Baumhover, and Agent Coder when they go to visit him in prison, and he does reveal a little more of what he says happened to his wife, his daughters, and his unborn son. And he also does reveal more about what he was thinking and more details about his relationship with NK. Now, this is all assuming that we can believe that some or all of this is true, which, anything that he says we do need to look at with a skeptical eye, because a lot has been said and then retracted by him or disproven in another way. So, we've got to take it for what it's worth, basically. So he does say, he says earlier in the interview that he had to talk her down sometime. And just like with many of the other things that the investigator should have latched onto and asked more about, he just kind of moves on from that. He later does say to Tammy Lee, this quote here, she, talking about Kessinger, had her moments where I had to talk her off a ledge kind of deal. Okay, when, Tammy Lee asks him to talk a little more about that, he immediately goes into, now this is interesting, there were some kind of videos of Kessinger recording herself because she was bipolar. He goes on to say that his father, as an attorney, told him about a few of the videos Kessinger made where she was talking about being bipolar. He goes on to say she'd get worked up about nothing. And then he went on to talk about the times that Kessinger went to his house. In my opinion, all of these different things are not next to one another in the interview, coincidentally. I think that in Chris Watts' mind, what he said first, that he had to talk Nicole off a ledge sometimes, and then the idea of her possibly being bipolar, and then his recollection of her coming to his house a few times. I think for him, in his mind, these things are all very closely related. Get me? Does that make sense? So I think that he's thinking about talking her off a ledge. She's freaking crazy, and she was super crazy the times when she came over to my house. So in that interview, when he does talk about her coming over on the 14th, he recalls missing many calls from Shanann, 10 calls, and I think he missed a total of 12 calls that day, as we will see in Discovery, where they laid out the quote-unquote facts of the case. Okay, and he also talks about him then learning that she was, until then he didn't know that she was dating other people, and he found out that she had made several dates on, or a couple of dates on eHarmony, but she didn't actually go on those dates because the people that she made the date with did not show up. Okay, very interesting. At another point in this interview, he also does talk about Nichol Kessinger saying that she really wants to give him his first son, that she was often caught up on this idea of being in second place or playing second fiddle, and that it was her grandest hope that she could someday give him a first son. Now we can corroborate Chris Watts' account of July 14th, a la his interview with Tammy Lee and friends, with his account of the day, July 14th, as he recalls it in his book with Sherilyn Cadle, Letters from Christopher. I don't have a copy of this to show you because I did not purchase the book, but I've read this part several times. So Christopher Watts tells Shanann Nichol that they were over at his house, and Dieter, the probably 8-pound dachshund, leads Nichol Kessinger upstairs. I guess he strong-armed her into going up the stairs. So when she's up there for a couple minutes playing around with Dieter, supposedly, and when she starts to come down the stairs, she is frozen on the stairs, and it has a dazed look on her face. When he asks her what's wrong, she goes on to tell him, I just saw a picture of your wife and girls, and what the heck, what's going on? She's so beautiful, and why are you doing this? Why would you give up all of this for me? And so Christopher Watson says that he, was able to talk her down off the ledge. He pulled her over to the couch and held her and consoled her and told her, that she is the only one. And it was at that point Nichol Kessinger, probably in retribution, told him about the dates that she had made with the eHarmony folks. So later on, they each go on to talk about how their sex life was never the same after that, and that when Nichol Kessinger pressed him as to what was wrong, he said that he couldn't get over the fact that she had planned on going on some other dates. Okay. So it was also, according to his account in Shanann Nichol's book, and Nichol Kessinger's account in piecemeal sound bites throughout her interviews with law enforcement regarding this day, July 14th. I will never know why they didn't press her more to get her freaking story straight. That Nichol Kessinger tells him that she wants to give him his first son. Okay? So this really is a whole lot to put together here. So let's now compare this to what is said in Discovery. We see that on July 14th, it says Kessinger and Watts visited a Mustang museum in Boulder together. Check, the Shelby Museum, right? It says that around 10 o'clock, Kessinger called Watts, and they held nearly a 5-minute conversation. Apparently, they're making their plans to meet up, right? Then it says at 10:19, Watts logged onto Facebook. Now, this is interesting. This day and a couple days before, and I think a day after or two, Watts logged onto Facebook, which is out of character for him. And shortly thereafter, he deleted his Facebook account. But that's for another video. Take note. The Discovery then goes on to say at 10:56 to 11:38 hours, Watts took photographs of assorted vehicles, and the metadata proves that he was actually, yes, at the Shelby American Collection Mustang Museum. At 12:46 to 13:08, Shanann, oh gosh, poor Shanann, made 4 unanswered calls to Watts. So this is in line with his account when he was talking to CBI, saying that she had called several times that day and he had not answered. Okay, at 13:17 minutes, so that's at 1:17, Watts answers Shanann's 5th call, and they held just a 5.5 minute conversation, so he could check in with his wife and his daughters who were across the country. So at 13:25 or 1:25 p.m., Watts searched the internet for 24 Karat Bistro and the restaurant's menu. So remember, macros. NK was very picky about what she ate. The data analyst that was working with law enforcement notes, I confirm this restaurant is located at 587 Briggs Street in Erie, 10 miles south of the Shelby Museum. So this all sounds aligned. At 14:36 and 2:15:27 hours, so this is 2:36 to 3:27, Shanann continued to make unanswered calls to Watts. I just feel so freaking bad for this woman who is 15 weeks pregnant with this man's baby. At 15:37 or at 3:37 p.m., Kessinger calls Watts, and of course he answers, and they hold a nearly 5-minute conversation. At 16:02 hours, 4:02 p.m., Kessinger called Watts, and they held a nearly 43-minute conversation. So I'm just going to go to, the time that we use here, not military time. At 4:26 p.m. to 5:27 p.m., during that call and just after, Shanann made 4 more unanswered calls to Watts. So while he's on the phone with Kessinger and after, again, for the 3rd time, Shanann is ringing up her husband, wants to tell him how the kids are doing, how the baby is growing inside her belly is doing, and he just, can't be bothered. Here we have at 5:23 p.m., Watts finally calls Shanann back, and they held a 10-minute conversation. Ostensibly, this is after NK had left his house. At 6:14 p.m., Watts spends nearly 2 hours online researching Dave Bunk Minerals. Dave Bunk Minerals, in the data analyst notes, it's a mineral dealer located near Arvada, and he's looking for dioptase, which is a translucent emerald-colored mineral. Now remember, NK was very much into minerals, quartz, crystals, and all of these other more natural geo-type things. Okay. Okay, so it should be noted that also in Watts' account of this day, July 14th, 2018, as he's telling the author of Letters to Christopher, he says that, all of this, NK seeing the pictures, them talking about her making dates with people in eHarmony and not going, and then eventually afterwards, after what I'm about to mention happens, she telling him that she wants to give him her firstborn son. Nichol Kessinger got really pissed off, and she stormed out of the house, and she went and sat in her car, and she sat there, and they were texting back and forth and or talking back and forth while he was in the house, and then eventually she came back in. Now, this just really reminds me of, I said this on one of my live streams, that I can remember doing something like this with my very first boyfriend when I was like 15 years old, and I would behave this way. If something was going the way I didn't want, I would, kind of storm out, try to be dramatic, make a point, and then, I'd return and want to be loved. Well, that was me doing that with my 15-year-old undeveloped brain and, learning how to be mature and act in relationships. And in this case, we are talking about a 30-year-old woman in a relationship with a married man with a family, definitely acting in this very childish way. So I think that some of this accounts for the conversations that they were having, during which time Shanann was calling and he didn't answer. She went and stormed off, sat in her car for quite some time, according to him, and then eventually came back in. That's when they had the conversation that ended with she telling him that she wanted to give him his first son. Now, what are we missing here? It seems like we're missing a piece of information, right? What else may have happened on this day? I mean, what prompted NK to go so far as to tell him that she wants to give him his firstborn son? I wonder. Well, it just so happens that on this very day, on July 14th, 2018, Shanann posted on Facebook, which we know Nichol Kessinger was looking at based on the copious amounts of Google searches that were found and that were actually released regarding her searching the Watts family, its members, and things about the Watts family. And Shanann Watts posted her first picture of her first little outfit that she had purchased for the anticipated Baby Watts. This is a post that appeared on Facebook that same very eventful day, July 14th, 2018. It's a picture of this little North Carolina Panthers onesie, so super cute. And actually, if, Nichol Kessinger didn't know better and was wondering, just by the colors, these look like boy colors to me. It's not a pink little outfit. It says, bought Baby Watts first outfit, okay? This post is leaving nothing to question. Is it Chris Watts' baby? Well, she says Baby Watts. Is the baby, in the oven or not? Well, she's buying outfits for it, so, I mean, yeah, it is. And if she were to surmise whether it was a boy or a girl, based on this picture, just when you're thinking our traditional baby boy blue or baby girl pink, this would look to me like it would be more of a baby boy outfit. But, let's say we don't even have to go that far. It is without a doubt a fact that Nichol Kessinger knew that Shanann Watts was pregnant because she had been posting about it for a couple weeks prior to this post. And from what we can tell, Nichol Kessinger was searching her on Facebook basically every day, searching her on Google, where her Facebook page would be the first thing to come up virtually every day. I am going to take a wild guess. It would not be a logical leap to say that Nichol Kessinger had already stalker searched Shanann Watts on this day, July 14th, and she saw this post. So this picture of this cute little outfit for the anticipated baby boy Watts, in my opinion, was what set Nichol Kessinger off that day and why July 14th, 2018 was such an eventful day in the relationship of NK and CW. What I also believe to be true is this is the day when CW started to set his plan into motion. It was on this date he realized that his worlds were colliding, that he could no longer pull off this scheme of having these two separate lives, his life with his family and then his life with his lover on the side, or happening at the same time, or however he saw it. It is my belief that on this day, when his worlds came crashing together and his sweet little lover had basically a nervous breakdown for which he had to talk her down off the ledge, and she stormed out of the house and made crazy calls and crazy texts inside the house from her truck in the driveway to him for quite a while, that Watts was like, this cannot be my reality. This cannot happen. She is not going to deal with me having a family while she is in my life. I need to do something about it. It is my opinion that on this day, she gave him a super huge ultimatum, and he was left with the thought of, what do I do to, live the life I want to live? I can't have them both at the same time. It's got to be one or the other.
Now, in regards to whether or not Nichol Kessinger knew that Shanann Watts was pregnant or not. So we see that Shanann posted this cute little onesie on July 14th, a day when there was maybe some drama or turmoil between Kessinger and Watts. And we know from everything that we've learned from studying this case and just from studying the discovery that Kessinger was a prolific Googler. After all, the official discovery timeline begins with Nichol Kessinger searching for Shanann Watts on September 1st, 2017, a full 10 months before, according to her and according to Watts, they had even met. The official discovery timeline ends with Nichol Kessinger searching information about Amber Frey, wanting to know her net worth and wondering whether or not people hated her because in Nichol Kessinger's eyes, apparently Amber Frey had committed the same sins as she, although we know that is absolutely not true. Amber Frey is a stand-up person and did absolutely nothing other than to help that investigation from the moment she found out that Scott Peterson had lied to her. Nichol Kessinger equals Amber Frey? I think not. And for all of the other reasons that we know to be true, I think that this piece of evidence alone, that Shanann Watts had posted this onesie saying it was for baby Watts to be on July 14th, 2018, is evidence enough in my mind, at least, that Nichol Kessinger absolutely, unequivocally, beyond a shadow of a doubt, knew that Shanann Watts was pregnant. So you may say, hey, so what? What does that matter? Well, that means that Nichol Kessinger's basic logical argument to law enforcement regarding why she deleted all of her text messages and calls and anything that reminded her of Chris Watts, because she just found out that Shanann was pregnant, and therefore he had told me this huge, huge lie. It was a huge lie. It just made me want to get rid of him. It was the lie that did this. It was this that did this. If she knew that Shanann Watts was pregnant, her fundamental logical argument to law enforcement as to why she deleted all of that material that could have very well been material in an investigation into a triple homicide of a pregnant woman and 2 young baby girls, it necessarily then means all of that is a total, blatant, bold-faced, disgusting lie. Let me now read to you the definition for obstruction of justice. The crime or act of willfully interfering with the process of justice and law, especially by influencing, threatening, harming, or impeding a witness, a potential witness, juror, or judicial or legal officer, by furnishing false information in or otherwise impeding an investigation or legal process.
The girlfriend you referenced in court, can you give us a better idea of her role in the investigation, how forthcoming she was, and how she helped?
She originally came forward and spoke to investigators on her own volition. Prior to the time, unfortunately, that she came in and spoke with investigators, she had deleted all of the information off of her phone that had any connection between her and Chris Watts. That hampered the investigation. That hampered our ability to get that electronic digital connection between the two. She was interviewed on multiple occasions. I believe that for the most part she was forthcoming in the course of those investigations. We don't have any reason to believe that she had any prior knowledge or involvement in the death of Shanann, Bella, Celeste, and Nico. I think that's the best way I can answer that.
By definition, and even by D.A. Rourke's definition, what Nichol Kessinger did with her text messages, with the call logs between herself and Chris Watts, and whatever other record she had on her phone that was communication between herself and Chris Watts, she committed obstruction of justice. Why this issue has not been brought to light, why we cannot call it what it is so we can deal with it as a justice system, is a question that has definitely not been answered in my mind or in the minds of many, many people who have been following this case. This case needs to be reopened so it can be fully investigated properly and looked at with scrutiny under the eyes of the law that are applicable to the jurisdiction of Frederick, Colorado, United States.